said one wrong sentence. Just one. And now, nothing. No reply, no eye contact, not even a "we'll talk later." Just silence. Cold, heavy, deafening silence. You start replaying the conversation in your head, trying to figure out what exactly you did wrong. You didn't throw a plate. You didn't yell. You didn't even raise your voice. But somehow, this silence feels louder than any argument you've ever had. Today, we're breaking down the psychology of silent treatment, why people do it, and what it actually does to your brain. And we'll cover the exact reason it works so terrifyingly well on some people and barely affects others at all. Let's set the scene. You're in a relationship, romantic, family, or even a friendship. You say something. Maybe it was a joke that landed wrong. Maybe it was a genuine mistake. And instead of a conversation, you get the wall. No yelling, no explanation. Just a person who suddenly acts like you don't exist. They answer in one-word texts. They forget to look at you. They walk past you like you're furniture.
Funny thing is, most people would actually prefer a screaming match over this. At least when someone's yelling, you know exactly where you stand. Silent treatment? You're left guessing, and your brain absolutely hates guessing. So, what is the silent treatment exactly? In psychology, it's often referred to as stonewalling, a term made famous by relationship researcher Dr. John Gottman, who spent decades studying why couples break up. Stonewalling is when a person completely withdraws from communication, refusing to respond, engage, or even acknowledge the other person.
They do this as a way of avoiding conflict, punishing someone, or regaining a sense of control. And here's the twist most people don't know. Gottman's research identified stonewalling as one of the 4 horsemen, the 4 communication patterns that most reliably predict a relationship is heading toward failure. Not cheating, not even constant arguing. Silence. Let that sink in for a second. Refusing to talk can be more damaging to a relationship than actually fighting. Here's where it gets interesting, because not everyone uses silent treatment for the same reason. Psychologists generally break it into 2 very different categories. The first is the overwhelmed avoider. Some people go silent because they're genuinely flooded with emotion. Their heart rate spikes, their thinking gets foggy, and their brain hits something called emotional flooding. In that state, talking often makes things worse, so their nervous system forces a shutdown, not to punish you, but to protect itself. This person isn't trying to control you, they're trying to survive the conversation. Then there's the other kind, and this is the one most people are actually asking about.
This person uses silence deliberately, as a tool. It's a way to punish, to create anxiety, and to force the other person into chasing them for resolution. Psychologists sometimes link this pattern to narcissistic or manipulative behavior because the silence isn't about needing space, it's about needing power. Same behavior, 2 completely different motivations. And honestly, most people can't tell which one they're dealing with in the moment, which is exactly why silent treatment feels so confusing. Now here's the part that sounds almost unbelievable, but it's backed by actual neuroscience. Researchers at UCLA ran a study using something called cyberball, a simple ball-tossing game where participants were secretly excluded by other players. Nothing physical happened. No pain, no injury, just social exclusion. And when they scanned participants' brains during this exclusion, the anterior cingulate cortex, the exact same brain region that activates during physical pain, lit up. Being ignored didn't just feel bad emotionally. Your brain processed it almost identically to being physically hurt. This is why silent treatment doesn't just feel uncomfortable, it can genuinely feel like being wounded. Your nervous system isn't being dramatic. It's running the same alarm system it would run if someone punched you. So when someone says, "It's just silence, get over it," science kind of disagrees with them. Here's the darkly funny part of all this. Silent treatment usually backfires in the most predictable way possible. The silent person wants control. They want the other person to feel bad, to apologize, to chase them. But what usually actually happens? The person on the receiving end starts obsessively analyzing everything. They end up replaying old texts, checking if they're online, and wondering if they're overreacting. Meanwhile, the silent person is sitting there, arms crossed, thinking they're winning, completely unaware they've just created a full-blown detective investigation on the other side. It's basically a Cold War, except one side doesn't even know a war started. And ironically, studies on relationship conflict show that couples who stonewall frequently report lower relationship satisfaction over time than couples who argue loudly but stay engaged. Turns out, yelling and making up beats silence and resentment. So if you're currently dealing with the silent treatment, whether from a partner, a parent, or a friend, here's what psychologists actually recommend, and it's probably not what you'd expect. First, don't chase the silence. Chasing, over-texting, over-explaining, apologizing for things you didn't do actually reinforces the behavior. It teaches the other person that silence gets them attention and control. Second, name it calmly. Something as simple as, "I notice you're not talking to me. I'm here when you're ready to talk," puts the responsibility back where it belongs. Third, set a real boundary if it's a repeated pattern. If someone consistently uses silence as a punishment rather than as genuine space to process emotions, that's not conflict resolution. That's emotional manipulation, and it's worth naming directly, even if that conversation is uncomfortable. And finally, know the difference. If someone says, "I need 20 minutes to calm down," that's healthy self-regulation. If someone disappears for 3 days and refuses all contact over a small disagreement, that's control. Learning to tell those two apart will save you an enormous amount of unnecessary anxiety. Here's something most videos on this topic completely miss. Silent treatment doesn't just damage the person receiving it. Long-term, it damages the person giving it too. Chronic avoidance rewires the brain to associate connection with danger. Over time, the silent controller often ends up isolated because the people around them slowly learn it's safer to disengage than to keep chasing a wall. So remember, your brain isn't overreacting when silence hurts. If this helped, hit subscribe. Drop a comment. Have you ever been on the receiving end of a silent treatment? Or been the one giving it? Be honest, and I'll see you in the next one.